I got into music, or really interested in music when I learned guitar at school. Learned to play acoustic guitar at an after-school club, and that's what really turned me on to making music.
I've always been singing from when I was very young, and I was in the school choir and did all those things. And I listened to the Top 40 Countdown every single weekend on Radio Caroline under my pillow, learnt it off by heart. And then in the late 70s, early 80s, I started buying music. And I was a big Vince Clarke fan when he started.
When I started really a band with Fletcher, Andrew Fletcher from Depeche, and he was playing bass and I was playing guitar, and we had a little drum machine. And then Fletcher's friend Martin, who lived around the corner from me, got involved, and he happened to have a synthesizer, and we just thought that that was easier to play than what we'd been playing with up to that point, so we all bought synthesizers. When I saw, there was a movie called The Graduate with Dustin Hoffman, and the music in it was all from Simon & Garfunkel, and I saw this movie and I listened to those songs, and I was so moved by the songs that I went straight out, bought the chord book, learned all the songs, and I thought, I can do that. I know I would love to try, so that's what really got me into writing songs in the first place with guitar. You know, it's just a case of learning the guitar well enough to play 3 or 4 chords, and then trying to work out a melody over the top of those chords. That was it's the same now, really. Hasn't changed.
I used to learn my first song that I wrote. I made myself remember it off by heart in my head. It was about Alice in Wonderland and running away and falling down the hole.
I think really the guy from Sparks was the first guy that did it properly. And then there's the guy from the Pet Shop Boys. We're all miserable sods, you know, the keyboard players. It's always been, so they were doing that a long time before I was.
Hier ist ein von 1995, ja.
Well, I think Vince is a legend. Anyway, he is, because you know, he's had 3 bands already, you know. I'm on the 3rd one, but well, yeah, but it kind of makes you feel like you're old. Yeah, it makes you feel like, yeah, that you're a granddad or whatever, which you are. Well, I'm not, but I could be.
Do what you want to do, be who you want to be.
When you're described as being an 80s band, you're in a, it's the sign for infinity, so you're like in a loop, so you keep going round and round and round and round and round and round, which is not bad in itself, but it does get a bit like this sometimes, and I think, well, there's more to life than just being in the 1980s, you know what I mean? And that was, we were only joined up in 1986 anyway, so, you know, I get a bit bogged down with that tag, I suppose.
Take me, I'm yours. Now I'm coming up for air.
It's not about making a great record and then kind of resting on your laurels, and it's not about trying to achieve something greater than your last record. It's just about being creative and actually doing something that's interesting, and you know, you just hope that other people get inspired by your latest project. You know, we finished this record and we're probably thinking about the next one. You know, it's that kind of thing. We tend to do the writing, the basic writing, on guitar or piano, and then all of the other stuff. I mean, then Andy will go away and work on some lyrics, and I'll go into the studio and start working on sounds. And at the end of the day, it's not like we needed to be surrounded by loads of technology. You know, as I said, it's the writing process is very basic, and we're just really working with a guitar and a tape recorder. So we could be anywhere.
I think there's a rip-roaring optimism that always has the rug pulled from under its feet, and that's it. Really, is like a pleading, driven, with a pulsating backbone to the whole thing.
Yeah. I think it's kind of getting something that's melodic, but having some kind of twist, some kind of bitter twist in either in the lyric or in the way that the melody works or the chord progression. That, for us, I think is a good song. What's important in our relationship is that we both know what doesn't work and are prepared to drop those ideas that don't work. It's all about, you know, moving on, not getting precious about what you come up with.
Don't know what you got till it's gone. The thrill of the chase, then it's gone.
Electronic music's always been my soul, really. So when the whole Britpop kind of clash guitar thing happened, I think we were kind of out on a limb, weren't we, for a while, for a long time.
Yeah.
So I love it. It's either one thing, it's in your blood or it's not, you know, and that's how it is.
I really like the stuff that Robin's doing. I really like the sounds, and I love the sound of her voice, that crystal.
She's got great melodies.
Yeah, clear voice.
I saw her in Ebor, where we're playing.
Oh, really?
And she, her favourite song of ours is "Love to Hate You" when she DJs. She said, but she's really great though. I also like Ladytron. I mean, they're a bit older, but I think they're brilliant.
You know, you can't really compare the music or the sounds that are happening today, the production sounds, with the stuff that's going on in the 80s. It's so much more over-processed. So they are kind of, you know, with a soft synth on a computer, you know, the actual tone is quite basic, and then in order to make it, to enhance it and make it punch, you know, everything's compressed or dipped or distorted. So you know, I think it's very different from the music of the 80s, from the synth music of the 80s.
Vince can always name that synth in one. And what synth's that, Vince? That's the one.
That's the next David Guetta
Is that
song,
what
which
it is?
just
Yeah,
came out.
Oh, I think people do use the technology. I mean, some people do, but I think that, you know, it's the old cliche. People rely on the technology as opposed to rely on the melody or the song, you know, or the good chorus. So, you know, people make, well, not people, but, you know, some people make music that's just an effect rather than a song. And I think that that's a shame, you know. There's as much good music out there now as there always was, really, but there's just more rubbish as well because more people can do it. But that's not a bad thing, not really.
So who's your latest flame? Driving around in the fast lane.
There are a few people that the record company was talking to about who should produce the next Erasure record, and Frank's name came up. Some fans actually also brought his name up, as did our tour manager, in fact. So people were aware of what he was doing. So we did the deal, yeah, and in the end he ended up producing the entire record. Frank came to Maine for a bit. We did some recording, some music, then went to to LA.
yeah, to LA.
LA did some
his
singing.
little studio, and then in London in the Mute studio.
The mixing was done by a guy called Rob Orton in London, who apparently has worked with Frank, you know, someone that Frank trusts a lot. So that was all part of the package. For the new album, I used as much analog equipment as possible. It wasn't always everything because a lot of the work that Frank was doing was remotely, and the work that he was doing with Andy was remotely. But as much as I could, I was using my old analog synthesizers. And this is the first time that I've actually used this stuff for 2 albums. 'cause the 2 albums prior to that were all done with soft synths because my studio was in the UK, and now it's in America where I live. The drum sounds were Frank, but the musical sounds and the basses and the melodic sounds were done with my analog synthesizers. I've been incredibly lucky, obviously, and we were both signed to an incredibly supportive record company, and the guy that runs the label, is a visionary. Our deal with Mute Records, i.e. with Daniel Miller, is mine has always been, and is now, has been based on it's a 50-50 deal. So there's no record contract, but the deal is that after the costs of the record, the promotion and the recording, then us and Mute split the profits 50-50, and it's always been that way. Yeah, and there's no written agreement. It's just trust and a friendship, So that's really been the backbone of Erasure, and obviously the fans. We've been touring for a long time, and I think that the fact that we play and people come along and enjoy the concerts has given us an incredibly loyal following.
Not a chance, not a hope in this world.
I'm sure for a new band it's incredibly difficult, unless you, especially if you're signed to a major record company. If your first single or second single doesn't do anything, then you're more than likely to get dropped. And also, major record companies don't sign artists for albums anymore. It's all for one-off singles, especially with the advent of all those talent TV, reality, X Factor, Britain's Got Talent shows. It's all just, it must be very, very difficult for a new band to break out. That's why playing live is so important.
The music industry is more and more pornographic, without a doubt. But maybe so is the whole everything.
World, yeah.
Yeah. Lots of the videos and stuff. And it seems to be aimed at younger and younger children the whole time, which I find it's quite disturbing, But I think it's just one very small aspect.
There are artists like obviously Lady Gaga that's still selling zillions of records. So, the dream's still there. She's come from some nightclub in New York.
Yeah, she stopped doing cocaine, and the world was her oyster. Yeah.
I think it's more interesting. I use Twitter, but I think it's more interesting not as a promotional tool, but more as a way of connecting to people who have the same ideas as you do, and especially connecting with people that have the same sense of humour. If I tweet some kind of really bad joke that I think is hilarious, then someone will tweet back almost instantly with something that's even funnier, but on the same kind of level. And I think that's great. We rarely tweet, "Oh yeah, we're playing. That's we've got a new record out." Or this.
I do.
Do you? No. He does. I don't. There you go. I don't read his tweets.
No. Don't you? I follow you.
I'm following you.
Are you?
Yeah. You said you didn't tweet much, so.
I don't tweet that much. No.
Mm-hmm.
So who's your latest flame? Driving a while in the fast lane. I won't say I told you so, but the boy has no shame.
First synth I ever bought was a thing called a Kawai 100 FS, which was a monophonic synthesizer. It was quite expensive. It was like £200 or something. It used to have, the unique thing about this particular synthesizer was that it had a CV and gate control input in the back. And once I took the synthesizer apart, and they were just holes. They weren't connected to anything. So I was kind of conned. The Pro One, I don't know. It's because it wasn't the first synthesizer I bought, but it's probably the most versatile. It's not overly complicated, number one, which is great, you know. It has really fast envelopes, so it's quite good for percussion sounds as well as musical sounds. And, you know, I think it has a really interesting and complex modulation sector, you know, for a little tiny monophonic synth.
So who's your latest flame? Driving a wild in the fast lane.
I did use the Morpheo, isn't it? Morpheo, yeah. The David Smith, the new synthesizer, yes. And I have used it for some of the tracks on the new Erasure record, and I really like it. I mean, I was really impressed. Just the sound of it, you know, the sound quality. And I also tried to use the Moog Fatty, which I totally, so far, I've not been impressed with. They're like, it's weird because they're both pure analog signals, pure analog filters, blah, blah, blah. But for some reason, the Moog doesn't sound like an analog synthesizer. It's strange. Sorry, Bob. I really like using the analog stuff is because there's no, well, like your earlier question, there's no presets. So, it's not to make it hard, but I mean actually to be hands-on and physical. You know, that's the difference between using a mouse and using two hands with cables and plugging them in and not knowing really what you're doing and then ending up with something that you didn't expect from the beginning, I think. You know, I couldn't recreate an analog sound. You know, it's always going to be slightly different. For live, we use audio recording. So I use the multi-tracks basically. Before I was using a lot of digital preset synths, or not preset, but digital synths with memory to try and recreate what we've done in the studio. But now we're using Logic Pro, and I use the multi-tracks and manipulate those. I didn't want to get that into that kind of, you know, Rick Wakeman kind of like, you know, two keyboards, two hands type vibe. So we're back to just the one synthesizer or the one controller. Sounds great though.